The stars shifted slightly through the massive viewport of the Vindicator. Silence ruled the bridge, broken only by the steady hum of old but over-engineered systems and the low, near-mournful ping of long-range sensors. The hull creaked like a sleeping beast stretching its spine. Everything else, the pilot's breathing, the captain's heartbeat, the ghosts of the past, was quiet. Commander Dorian Reyes stood alone at the helm. No crew, no AI support, just him and the last warship built by Earth's now-vanished military-industrial juggernaut. The Vindicator wasn't sleek like the Empire's vessels. It was a floating cathedral of armor plating, pulse cannons, and dark, silent threat. Ugly by galactic standards, brutal by design, and it was moving toward the border. Crossing into Imperial space in 30 seconds, Dorian whispered to no one but himself. His voice sounded like gravel soaked in old blood. Showtime. The screen lit up with a dozen pings. Imperial sensor buoys, automated warning systems, defensive satellites locking in. The usual automated chatter followed. Standard threat assessments, red-coded warnings, and a final message from the Imperial border AI. Unregistered warship. Halt. Identify immediately. This is restricted space. Dorian didn't respond. Instead, he leaned back in his chair and watched. Just watched. The Vindicator did not stop. It didn't need to. By the time the Empire's border command realized the ship wasn't bluffing, it had already crossed the threshold. No cloaking. No stealth drive. It wasn't trying to sneak in. It wanted to be seen. Across Imperial space, alarm klaxons sounded in deep, echoing waves. Hundreds of border stations began to scramble. Fleet commanders were called out of their sleep chambers. One elderly strategist vomited when he saw the name of the ship that had entered their territory. The Vindicator. The name hadn't been spoken aloud in decades, not since the Earth collapse, not since the fall of Titan, not since the entire United Council of Systems vanished in nuclear fire and orbital ash. Most of the galaxy believed humanity was extinct, destroyed in their own war with themselves. They were half right. The humans were gone, but their monsters lived on. Dorian Reyes wasn't here on a diplomatic mission. He wasn't a remnant of a lost race seeking peace or mercy. He was here for one thing: retribution. The Empire had watched humanity die. They'd embargoed Earth during its collapse, stripped colonies for resources, and whispered propaganda into the ears of allies until every Outer Rim nation turned its back. And when the last human signal went dark, the Empire toasted its fall. Dorian remembered, because he had been there, deep under Mars, inside a forgotten military AI vault, frozen in cryo for 30 years before waking to a galaxy that had erased his people like dust swept under a mat. Now he was back, and his warship remembered too. As the Vindicator pushed deeper into Imperial space, entire fleets were mobilized, but none dared to engage. Not yet. Not without orders, not without reinforcements, because the ship wasn't just a war machine, it was a warning. And Dorian? He wasn't a survivor. He was a sentence, one that started with fire. Inside the command deck of the Imperial Fortress World Tarsus V, Admiral Kelran Vake stared at the screen with dry, unblinking eyes. Behind him, aides shouted, officers panicked, but he heard nothing except the pounding of his own pulse. "It's a bluff," one of the strategists stammered. "A relic, just one ship." "No," Kelran whispered. "Not that ship." He stood, ancient bones aching under the weight of memory. "That's the Vindicator. The same ship that wiped out the 3rd Syrinx Armada in 6 minutes. The ship that glassed Val Corin with a single orbital strike. That ship doesn't bluff." He turned slowly, his eyes haunted. Earth didn't die. It's just been waiting. On the bridge of the Vindicator, Dorian looked down at a photo he kept tucked near the control panel. Faded, nearly disintegrated. A woman, a boy, and a planet behind them. Earth, before the fall. He closed his eyes. Let's begin. The Vindicator fired. The first volley from the Vindicator wasn't a warning shot. It was judgment. 7 plasma-laced warheads ripped across Imperial space, leaving brilliant streaks of white-blue fire as they tore through the vacuum. They moved with impossible speed, dancing around the automated defense grids like they knew exactly where every satellite, every interceptor drone, and every failsafe was hidden. Because they did know. Dorian had fed the ship's ancient targeting systems a full tactical map of Imperial defenses. Maps stolen from the Martian archives decades before Earth fell. And the Vindicator's algorithms had been evolving since then, learning, adapting, running simulations in silence. It wasn't just a ship, it was a veteran of a war that never ended. The warheads found their targets with brutal precision. 3 border stations vanished in incandescent bursts of heat and light, their debris scattering like ash over dead moons. A fleet yard orbiting Xerxes Prime was carved in 2 before its hangar bays could even open. A signal relay node, once used to monitor 8 sectors, was reduced to floating slag in seconds. And that was just the beginning. Across the Empire, chaos erupted. Command networks choked with emergency pings. Civilians on fringe worlds began to riot at the news that a human ship, a real one, had crossed the veil. Some laughed in disbelief. Others screamed in dread. Children born long after Earth's fall asked their parents what a Terran warship was, and those who remembered went silent. Inside the Imperial Senate, panic was disguised as diplomacy. Noble houses demanded immediate action, while border lords sent encrypted messages begging for reinforcements or forgiveness. At Fortress World Tarsus 5, Admiral Kelrin Vak stood over a 3-dimensional model of the invasion route. He didn't blink, didn't breathe. "Get me Grand Strategist Eloran," he said through gritted teeth. "Now!" His communications officer paled. "Sir, she's on Veskar 4 for the Treaty Summit. Then wake her up. Tell her the past has come back to burn us." On the other side of the conflict, Dorian sat alone in the bridge of the Vindicator, eyes reflecting the fires blooming across his screen. Not a twitch of emotion passed over his face. His fingers hovered above the controls, methodically adjusting course and speed, avoiding patrol routes before they could react. The Vindicator didn't need to dodge. It dared them to strike first. The Empire had expected a slow incursion, maybe pirates, maybe a scavenger from the old Earth fleets, but this was deliberate, coordinated, surgical. The Vindicator wasn't on a suicide run, it was on a mission, and every second it remained inside Imperial space sent a message. You should have finished the job. A flash on the tactical readout snapped Dorian from his thoughts. 3 Imperial corvettes had broken formation near the Niven corridor. Young, fast ships, new generation, likely crewed by fresh officers hoping to earn glory by striking down the last of the human ghosts. He smiled without warmth. Let's see if they know who they're chasing. He angled the Vindicator sharply into a cloud of asteroid debris, old mining territory. He cut all emissions, letting the ship drift for 20 seconds before pulsing a single low-frequency signal. A breadcrumb. A trap. As expected, the corvettes followed. The first 2 entered the field at full burn, confident, reckless. The third hesitated, slowed just enough to realize something was off. By then, it was too late. The debris field erupted. Cluster mines, hundreds of them embedded in the asteroids, coded to human biosignatures and triggered by proximity, detonated all at once. The first corvette vanished in a flash. The second screamed as its hull split open, venting crew into space. The third tried to turn away, but a single railgun slug from the Vindicator's side battery punched through its spine and left it spinning in silence. 3 ships. Gone. 15 seconds. Dorian exhaled slowly. The ghosts were screaming louder now. Not literal ones, he wasn't insane, not fully, but they were always there, whispering in the hum of the engines, in the flickering lights. His crew, long dead. His family, lost on Earth. His commander vaporized at the fall of Titan. And still, they followed him. "I'm not done yet," he muttered. A sudden ping. Incoming communication. Encrypted but human standard protocol, one so old it shouldn't exist anymore. He froze. No one was supposed to know that encryption. No one was supposed to remember. He opened the channel. The screen flickered, and a voice, broken and familiar, whispered through. "Raze, is that really you?" The voice hit Dorian like a missile to the gut, unexpected, sharp, and impossible to ignore. He froze. For a moment, the bridge of the Vindicator fell deathly quiet. No alarms, no pings, just that broken, static-laced whisper echoing from the comms system. "Raze, is that really you?" The voice was distorted, cracked like it had traveled through decades of silence, but the tone underneath, it was unmistakable. "Elira." Dorian's breath caught. He hadn't heard that name, or that voice, in over 30 years. Not since the day the sky over Earth turned black and Titan fell in a wave of nuclear flame. She'd been a tactician then, second in command of the Helix fleet. She was smarter than anyone else in the room, colder too, but she had always been loyal, always honest. And she had died. Or so he thought. Dorian leaned closer to the console, hesitating before speaking. His voice, when it came, was a growl dipped in disbelief. "Elira, how the hell are you alive?" Silence. Then the voice came again, clearer this time, less static, more human. "Same way you are, the cold, the dark. We were both buried under the ashes of a dying world. But unlike you, I didn't stay buried willingly." His fingers tightened on the console. "Where are you?" A pause. A sharp inhale. "Inside Imperial space, deep inside. They captured me during the collapse. I've been repurposed." She said the word like it tasted like acid. Dorian could hear the venom in her tone, the layers of trauma behind that one simple phrase. "I fed them lies for years, misinformation, twisted reports. I've been sabotaging them from the inside, piece by piece. And when I saw your signal, I knew you'd come back. I just didn't know if you'd still be you." "I'm still me," he said flatly. "And I'm not here for rescue missions. I'm here to finish what they started." Another pause. "Then let me help." He leaned back in his chair, eyes narrowing. He'd spent the last decade trusting no one, not even the ship. And now, out of nowhere, one of the last people who knew him before the fall just happens to be alive, operating from inside the Empire? Too convenient. But it also explained a lot. The way the defense systems had been slower than expected. The strategic gaps in their response. He'd assumed it was incompetence. Maybe it was sabotage. "Prove it," he said. There was a beat of silence. Then she transmitted something. A data package. Tiny. Encrypted in human military code from the old Earth fleet. Something no one outside of the Martian vaults should have had access to. Dorian ran it through the Vindicator's decryption system. The file opened. What he saw made his blood run colder than cryo. A list of Imperial targets, high-ranking officers, research stations, weapon depots, civilian centers quietly supplying the war machine. And one name highlighted at the very top, Admiral Kelran Vak. Dorian's eyes narrowed. "I know that name," he murmured. Elira's voice came through again, harder now. "You should." He signed the order that doomed the Helix fleet, the one that left us to die. He's not just a target, Reyes. He's the architect, and now he's the only thing standing between you and the heart of the Empire." Dorian stood slowly, letting the words settle. Kelrin Vak, the man who'd ordered Earth to be cut off, who'd chosen silence over salvation, who'd watched billions burn from the safety of his orbital palace. He wasn't just another name. He was the reason Dorian still woke up screaming. The comms crackled again, softer this time. "He's at Bastion Prime, the capital fortress. You'll never reach him without help." "And what, you're just going to guide me there?" "I already have. Check your nav grid." Dorian did. A new route had been uploaded. Slower, riskier, but it avoided most of the patrol routes, slipping through mining tunnels, forgotten smugglers' corridors, and gas fields where sensors failed. "You're insane," he muttered. "And you're alive," she snapped. "We don't get to be sane anymore, Dorian. We're relics in a galaxy that tried to erase us. But if we want the Empire to bleed, we do it together." Dorian stared at the flickering console, the stars moving slowly outside the viewport. He didn't trust her, but he hated them more. He tapped the nav console. "Course locked, heading for Bastion Prime." The Vindicator turned, slowly disappearing into a field of drifting ice and silent gas, its weapons humming like wolves sharpening teeth. And in the capital world, deep inside the throne room of a planet carved from stone and steel, Admiral Kelrin Vak received the report. His aides trembled as they delivered it. "The Vindicator has changed course. It's coming straight for you." Vak didn't flinch. He simply stood, slowly, as the firelight glinted off his medals. So it begins. The journey to Bastion Prime was a descent into the Empire's forgotten veins, paths not meant for warships, let alone one carrying the wrath of a dead planet. The Vindicator moved like a ghost through old mining tunnels beneath the surface of Lornak III, a fractured moon that once fueled the Empire's earliest expansion. Its tunnels, now abandoned, ran like arteries under crumbling stone, too narrow for capital ships, too forgotten to be monitored. And yet, Dorian's ship glided through, her engines whisper quiet, hull scraping ancient rock as if the planet itself had forgotten how to scream. The route Elira had uploaded was working. So far. Dorian didn't like it. He'd trusted no one for years, survived by doubting every voice but his own. Yet here he was, following a path laid out by a woman he'd last seen 30 years ago on a burning station, now claiming to be alive and embedded in the Empire's core. Every sensor sweep, every flicker of static made his fingers twitch toward the trigger. But the Vindicator obeyed without question. Silent, focused, hungry. It remembered the Empire, and it wanted to be let off the leash. The deeper they went, the more signs he saw of decay. Entire Imperial outposts buried in dust, emergency beacons blinking aimlessly in the dark. Dead drones floated like corpses outside shattered airlocks. The mighty Empire, it seemed, had roots as rotten as its crown. Dorian recorded everything, sent bursts of data into the net. The Vindicator's black box still held a pulse beacon, encrypted, undetectable to most scans. Elira was supposed to be receiving it, whether she was or not. He couldn't be sure. Halfway through a dense gas belt near the heart of the Eridan sector, the ship's motion sensors tripped. Something was following him. He brought up the rear display. Faint readings, small, fast. 2 ships, then 3, then 4. Sleek, Imperial signatures. They'd found him. "Stealth patrols," he muttered, lips thinning. "They're learning." He didn't panic. The Vindicator was old, but age meant experience. Experience meant scars and weapons. He powered down active systems, reduced heat emissions, and drifted, allowing the thick mist of the belt to swallow the ship whole. Through the viewport, glowing red shadows flitted past. The Empire's new class scout ships, equipped with phase thrusters and cryocloak overlays, moved like sharks around a sleeping beast. They didn't see him. Yet. Dorian reached slowly to the side panel and activated the magnetic launch ports. No targeting system. No lock-on. Pure analog. A move from a forgotten war. He fired. The mines released silently. Dozens of them, drifting behind him like sleeping fireflies. He waited. And when the scouts looped around for a scan, they detonated. The explosion was blinding in the gas field, lighting up the whole belt like lightning in a storm. One ship evaporated instantly. Another spun out, venting fluid and screaming metal. The others scattered, but Dorian was already gone, diving into a narrow crevice in the asteroid cluster below. The old tricks still worked, but now the Empire would know exactly where he was headed. No more secrets. He emerged from the field on the other side, sensors roaring as dozens, no hundreds of signals began moving across Imperial space, converging. The news had spread. The Vindicator was coming for Bastion Prime. And nothing was stopping it now. He opened communications. "Elira!" he called out. "They're on alert. We're past Subtle." Her voice returned almost instantly, tense, controlled. "Then you better move faster. You've got about 12 hours before Bastion launches its planetary shields." "I'll be there in 6. A brief pause. "You always were insane. And you always had a death wish," he snapped back. But his tone lacked venom. It was something else. Familiarity, resentment, maybe even trust. He closed the channel and leaned forward. The capital wasn't just a fortress. It was a statement. A planet wrapped in armor, orbiting a neutron star with enough firepower to erase continents. Even with Elira's intel, getting close would be suicide. Which was fine. He hadn't come here to live. He'd come to make them remember what it meant to fear Earth. As the Vindicator punched through the final outer checkpoint, triggering every alarm within 100,000 kilometers, Dorian stared at the blinking dot that marked his target. Admiral Kelrin Vak, the butcher of Helix Fleet, the man who watched Earth burn and called it strategy. Dorian whispered to the ship like it was alive. "Let's finish this." The Vindicator surged forward, and Bastion Prime prepared for a war it thought it would never have to fight again. The approach to Bastion Prime wasn't subtle. It wasn't supposed to be. The Vindicator dropped out of warp just outside the gravity well of the capital world, its hull screaming against the force of re-entry. Plasma scorched its sides as it sliced through the upper atmosphere like a blade dragged across glass. Every orbital cannon within range opened fire, but the Vindicator didn't dodge. It charged straight through. Anti-ship missiles streaked across the sky, but the ship's old auto-defense grid activated in a blinding flash, railgun turrets snapping into motion, intercepting projectiles mid-flight with a precision that felt like sorcery to the watching Imperial officers. The ancient Terran targeting algorithms were a century old, but they were still years ahead of anything the Empire had. One of the Empire's orbital defense platforms got bold, moving in to intercept. Dorian didn't even blink. He fired the ventral lance cannon. A beam of white-hot energy screamed across the void and hit the platform dead center. There was no explosion, just a flash of light. And then nothing. The structure collapsed in on itself, imploding before it had the chance to die with dignity. On the surface of Bastion Prime, cities darkened. Sirens blared. The planetary shield began to rise, layers of shimmering energy slowly engulfing the capital. Citizens looked to the sky and saw what their parents had warned them about in bedtime horror stories. A lone human warship. They used to mock the phrase. Now it was prophecy. Inside the command citadel, Admiral Kelran Vok stood before a massive holodisplay, his arms behind his back, his face unreadable. Around him, panic reigned. Generals shouted, officers pleaded, security personnel called for evacuation of the Senate quarter. He said nothing. He watched. He remembered the last time he'd seen that ship, through a satellite feed, above the burning orbit of Titan. He remembered the Helix fleet, cornered, begging for support. And he remembered denying it. He told himself then that Earth was a failed experiment, that the human hunger for war would collapse in on itself, and the galaxy would be better off for it. But the Vindicator had survived. And now it had come for him. "Admiral," a young aide stammered, eyes wide with terror, "we must retreat to the planetary core." "Hold your post," Vok said quietly. "But sir," "I said hold your post." The aide froze. Vek turned toward the nearest tactical officer. "Status on the shield?" 65%. Full activation in 5 minutes. Then we have 5 minutes to kill it." Back in orbit, Dorian guided the Vindicator with the calm precision of a man already dead inside. The ship had taken damage. Its port thrusters sputtered. Half the rear cannons were offline. But it didn't matter. He wasn't planning on flying home. He focused his attention on the city beneath him, Centra Domina, the seat of imperial power, the same city that had ordered the embargo on Earth, the same city that celebrated its death. He marked 3 locations: the Defense Ministry, the Senate Vaults, and the primary AI Nexus. He would raise them all, but just as he prepared the firing sequence, the comms sparked again. Elira's voice. "Dorian, you need to know something. They're moving civilians into the Nexus Tower." He froze. "What?" "They're using it as a shield, thousands of them, non-military, mostly children and workers." He stared at the screen. The targeting reticle blinked over the tower, already charged, already primed. His jaw clenched. The Empire hadn't changed. It still hid behind the innocent, still used lives like tools. He could fire anyway, make his statement, finish the mission. But at what cost? The silence on the bridge was suffocating. The ghosts whispered louder now. Voices of the Helix dead, his crew, his sister, the people the Empire erased. They cried for vengeance. But one voice cut through them all, Elira's. "Don't become what they said we were. Don't give them that." Dorian cursed under his breath. His hand hovered over the fire controls. And then he did something no one expected. He redirected the payload. He targeted the old military spire to the east, Vok's personal estate. The man had built it as a monument to victory over Earth. Arrogant, opulent, thick with security, but no civilians. He fired. The sky split open. A lance of light tore through the clouds and slammed into the spire with the weight of an angry god. The explosion rocked the capital. Fire bloomed across the horizon, and a shockwave shattered windows for miles. The estate was gone. Nothing left but molten steel and ashes. In the command citadel, Admiral Vok stared at the smoldering crater on the screen. For the first time in decades, his face cracked. His jaw tightened. His hand trembled. "He spared the civilians," one officer whispered. "He's not here for conquest," another muttered. "He's here for you." Vok said nothing, because he knew. And somewhere beneath the surface, buried in the labyrinth of the capital's underbelly, a figure in a stolen uniform keyed open a hidden service hatch and emerged into the city's heart. Elira was on the move, and Dorian was about to land. The Vindicator came down like a fallen god. Its engines roared against the skies of Bastion Prime, shaking the buildings below as people ran, screamed, or simply stood frozen beneath the shadow of history, returned. The ship didn't dock. It impaled itself into the city's core sector, crushing half a security tower beneath its reinforced hull and sending a thunderous ripple through the capital's foundation. And then the silence came. Not peace. The kind of silence that settles in a graveyard just before a storm breaks. Dorian Reyes stepped out of the ship like a reaper made flesh. The air was thick with smoke and ash. Sirens blared in the distance. The Imperial military had pulled back from the area, unsure if this was a single-man incursion or the first wave of something worse. But Dorian didn't care. He didn't need backup, didn't need an army. He was the army, clad in old Terran battle armor, scarred, half-painted, more patchwork than regulation. He moved through the streets like a walking obituary. Civilians scattered at the sight of him. The boldest few tried to film, but their hands trembled too much to keep the feed steady. Everyone had heard of the Vindicator. No one had expected to see the man who flew it. Dorian checked his HUD. Elira's signal blinked faintly 3 clicks east, moving fast. She was deep inside the infrastructure tunnels beneath the Imperial Council building. Good. That meant she was inside the belly of the beast, and it meant he had an opening. He crossed through the city like a ghost, past shattered statues of Imperial war heroes, past propaganda screens still spitting anti-human rhetoric, warning the public of Terran resurrection threats. He smiled bitterly. They still didn't get it. This wasn't resurrection. This was retribution. At the edge of the council sector, resistance finally came. Elite guards, dozens, armed with plasma spears, rail rifles, and combat drones, the Empire's finest. They didn't speak, didn't threaten. They just formed a wall and raised their weapons. Dorian stopped 20 meters from them. He could have opened fire, could have called in a surgical strike from the Vindicator still hovering above. But instead he dropped his rifle, let it clatter to the ground. And then he spoke. "You think you're protecting something sacred," he said, his voice echoing through the burned-out ruins. "But all you're guarding is a lie." No one moved. He took another step forward. "I don't want your city. I don't want your throne. I don't even want your lives." He pointed upward, toward the smoldering remains of Admiral Vak's estate, still glowing faintly in the ash-filled sky. "I want him." The guards hesitated. A few glanced toward the council building behind them. One looked afraid. That's when the ground beneath them exploded. Elira emerged from the side tunnel in a flash, plasma charges tearing open the pavement, sending several guards flying. She moved like lightning, a blur of motion in stolen armor, laying down cover fire with one hand while flinging a thermal blade to Dorian with the other. He caught it in one motion. The fight was chaos. Dorian didn't shoot. He closed distance. He slammed into the first guard like a battering ram, crushing armor and bone with the weight of a man who had nothing left to lose. The second he cut down with a single slash to the neck, sparks flying as the blade chewed through synth fiber plating. Elira was already past the wall, carving through drones with surgical precision, her face streaked with soot and blood. She wasn't fighting like someone trying to survive. She was fighting like someone trying to end something. The guards fell one by one, until only silence remained. Dorian stood in the rubble, panting, the blade dripping molten residue. He looked at Elira, older, harder, but still her. "Nice entrance," he muttered. She gave him a bloody grin. "You softened them up for me." He nodded once. "Vak?" She pointed to the building behind her. "Underground bunker. AI protected. Last checkpoint is biometric. Only opens to registered bloodlines." Dorian's face hardened. "Then I'll open it with his." They didn't waste another second. They descended into the underlevels of the council building, ancient chambers laced with gold-trimmed halls and lies engraved into every polished surface. It was a mausoleum of stolen glory. Every painting, every statue, a revisionist tribute to the Empire's triumph over Earth. Elira said nothing, but Dorian saw the way her fingers twitched at her side. She remembered. They reached the final chamber, a thick door, biometric lock. Dorian stepped up, placed his palm on the scanner. Nothing. Access denied, of course. Only Vak's blood would open this. And the bastard was waiting below, watching, counting the seconds, no doubt arming every last defense he had. Dorian turned to Elira. No more subtlety. She smirked. Thought you'd never ask. They planted the charges, backed up, and lit the fuse. The explosion shook the chamber. Metal screamed, systems fried. The door blew inward, and as the smoke cleared, Dorian Reyes stepped through into the final sanctum, where Admiral Kelrin Vak waited with a pistol, a smirk, and the eyes of a man who thought he still had control. The sanctum was colder than expected. Beneath the layers of gold, reinforced titanium, and Empire-polished decor, it felt like a tomb. Quiet, bitter, and built for the man who thought he'd never have to face judgment. Admiral Kelrin Vak stood at the far end of the chamber, framed by massive windows that showed the scorched skyline of Bastion Prime. Fires flickered in the distance. Sirens wailed, and far above the silhouette of the Vindicator still hovered, unmoving, watching like a judge ready to pass sentence. Vak didn't flinch. He held a sleek plasma pistol, aimed straight at Dorian. His uniform was immaculate, medals pinned to his chest like trophies looted from the dead. You look older, he said. Dorian stepped forward, the thermal blade still in his hand, his expression unreadable. You look smaller. Vak gave a hollow chuckle. Still full of quips. I'd forgotten how irritating Terrans could be. Elira moved to Dorian's side, weapon raised. Drop the gun, Kelrin. It's over. The Admiral shook his head slowly. Number, you don't get to tell me when it's over. I built this empire. I sacrificed billions to keep it from descending into chaos. And now what? You come here with your relic of a ship, your vengeance fantasies, thinking you'll erase me and history will remember you? Dorian said nothing, just took another step forward. Vak's finger tightened on the trigger. You don't understand the weight of command, he snapped. You never did. I watched Earth eat itself alive. You want to know what I saw in those final transmissions? Madness, cannibalism, nuclear fire. Your people deserved extinction. Dorian's voice was calm, but low enough to cut through steel. My people deserved help, not abandonment. You were already dead, Vak hissed. I just made the call to stop wasting resources on a corpse. And now the corpse is walking, Elira muttered. Vak's eyes flicked to her, burning with contempt. You were the worst of them. A traitor, feeding us lies. Do you think I didn't know? You kept us blind for years. You let this happen. Elira smirked, stepping forward, shoulder to shoulder with Dorian. Then maybe you should have killed me instead of using me. Dorian raised his blade slowly. You had your war. You had your empire. Now it's time for your reckoning. Vak's pistol fired. A single shot, fast, precise, but not fast enough. Dorian shifted, the plasma bolt grazing his shoulder, but not stopping him. He crossed the space between them in a blur, grabbed the Admiral by the throat, and slammed him against the reinforced window behind him. The pistol clattered to the ground. Dorian held the blade to Vak's chest. You left us to die. I saved the galaxy. You saved your legacy. Vak spat blood into Dorian's face. I saved them from you, from the Terran plague. You think this ends with my death? You think the people won't hunt you to the edges of space? Dorian leaned closer, voice like thunder muffled in frost. I don't care what happens after. I didn't come for justice. I came to end you. But just before he drove the blade in, he stopped, his eyes narrowed. Because killing Vak here, just another dead tyrant in another hidden bunker, was too easy, too clean. He wanted more than blood. He wanted truth. He yanked the Admiral forward, slammed him onto a control console, and activated the live transmission panel. It linked to every major broadcast tower in the Empire. Emergency override. The screen lit up. Across Bastion Prime and across the outer sectors, people stopped what they were doing as an unauthorized message crackled into existence. And they saw him. Dorian Reyes, the last Terran war commander, standing over the man who betrayed Earth. "This is a message to the Empire," he said, voice steady, cold, absolute. This man, Admiral Kelran Vak, signed the order that condemned an entire civilization. He watched Earth fall. He called it a mercy, and he thought the dead wouldn't return. He dragged Vak's face into view, bloodied, broken, terrified. "They told you we were monsters. The Terrans were violent, unstable, dangerous. They used our extinction to build their power." He paused. "I'm not here to rule you. I'm not here to replace the Empire." He stared into the camera, into the galaxy. "I'm here to remind you. You can only bury the truth for so long before it comes digging out of the grave." He ended the transmission. Vak screamed and tried to break free, but Dorian shoved him back with one hand, blade inches from his heart. "You want the legacy? You'll have it," Dorian said. "The whole Empire just watched you break. That's your legacy now. The coward who created a lie so big it brought the past back to kill him." Vak snarled. "You won't make it out of this city." "Wasn't planning to." Dorian drove the blade into his chest. Vak's body slumped, finally still. Elira stepped back, exhaling slowly. "It's done," she whispered. "No," Dorian said, looking towards the sky. "It's only beginning." The death of Admiral Kelran Vak did not end the Empire. It unmasked it. Across Bastion Prime, the signal Dorian sent out couldn't be stopped. The override had been hard-coded into the Vindicator's AI decades ago, a fail-safe for lost wars, designed not to win, but to expose. And that's exactly what it did. The people didn't rise in cheers. There was no sudden revolution. Instead, there was silence, the kind that stretches across a crowd when a lie finally dies and no one knows what to say. Vak's face, beaten and trembling, replayed over and over on every screen, his screams, his last words, the moment the blade entered his chest. Everything. And Dorian Reyes, standing over him like death, returned from exile. Imperial citizens across 100 systems stared in horror, not at the Terran warship, but at the truth, that their leaders had built their shining empire atop bones, that Earth had not fallen from madness, but had been pushed. Some tried to spin it. High Lords claimed it was a faked transmission, that it was propaganda. But the military logs that Elira dumped into the public grid, signed orders, recorded meetings, intercepted communications, were undeniable. The Empire had orchestrated Earth's extinction, and the last human warship had come back to make sure they never forgot. Dorian stood in the ruins of the bunker, staring at the blood pooling beneath Vak's corpse. The tremors from the fight had started to collapse the upper levels. Fires burned above. The building would fall soon. He looked at Elira. She was leaning against a shattered console, one arm cradled against her chest, blood leaking from her side. "Still with me?" he asked. She gave him a tired smile. "Barely, but yeah." "Extraction?" She shook her head. "No way through the blockade. The Vindicator's shields are almost gone." Dorian nodded. He already knew. They weren't making it out, and that was fine. He turned toward the lift that led back to the surface. "We walk. One last time." Together they climbed out of the bunker. The city above was chaos, but it wasn't fighting. Not yet. Troops were disoriented. Leaders were silent. Civilians stared at them as they walked through the rubble. Two ghosts dragging themselves through a graveyard of lies. No one stopped them. At the extraction point near the old Senate walls, the Vindicator hovered low, engines failing, smoke pouring from its thrusters. She was dying. But like any old war beast, she'd waited until the mission was done. Dorian stopped and looked up at her. His ship, his friend, his coffin. He turned to Elira. "You don't have to—" She cut him off with a glare. "If you think I came this far to let you die alone, you're dumber than I thought." They stepped inside the ship. The bridge was quiet. Lights flickering. Alarms silent now, like even the systems knew this was the end. Dorian sat at the helm one last time. His hands moved slowly over the controls, inputting the final sequence. A jump. Not to escape, to bury the evidence. The Vindicator's reactor would overload at the center of Bastion Prime's outer defense ring, enough to fry every orbital cannon, every satellite, every warship on standby. No more retaliation. No more nukes, just silence. "Final command?" the ship's AI asked, voice worn and ancient. Dorian looked at Elira. She nodded. "Execute." The ship rose, climbing through the smoke, toward the clouds. Past the towers, past the walls, past the layers of the Empire that had survived on stolen memory. And then, in one final blaze of defiance, the Vindicator vanished into light. The explosion could be seen from every part of the capital, a second sun, a funeral pyre, the last Terran warship. Gone. In the days that followed, the Empire did not collapse, but it cracked. People began to question, to speak, to whisper the name Dorian Reyes, not with fear, but with reverence. Not because he brought death, but because he brought truth. Monuments fell, archives were opened. The words Terran extinction were rewritten into Terran betrayal. Elira's files spread like wildfire, and the Council fractured under the weight of too many covered lies. And in the dark corners of the galaxy, where forgotten colonies still bore the DNA of Earth, a signal echoed. We are not gone. We are not finished. We are human. And we remember. The message came in on a dead channel. No encryption, no code phrases. Just 6 words beamed across subspace like a drunken dare. Mercenaries wanted. Highest pay. Human most species would have ignored it. The veteran guilds, they laughed. Others, they just flagged it as a potential death wish and kept moving. But Zarak? Zarak was too desperate to laugh, and too proud to run. He sat alone in a run-down cantina on the asteroid port of Varan X9, sipping rotgut that burned like acid through his 3 stomachs. His crew was gone, dead in a skirmish that wasn't even supposed to be real. His ship was half-junked and impounded for unpaid docking fees. And the bounty on his head from the Drek Syndicate was growing by the minute. So, yeah, desperate. "Human job," he muttered to himself, clawed fingers tightening around the edge of the rusted table. How bad could it be? The bartender heard him and didn't even pretend to hide the wince. Just kept wiping the same glass for the 5th time, eyes flicking to the exit like he expected something to explode. Maybe someone already had. Zarak didn't care. He keyed the contact code. 2 hours later, he was aboard a rust-colored cargo freighter headed for Sol System, ignoring the last-minute regrets clawing at his spine like hungry insects. Earth wasn't like the rest of the galaxy. The gravity was too strong, the air was too moist, and the humans were wrong. Not in a biological sense. They were just sacks of bone and muscle like everyone else. It was their minds, their unpredictability, their stubbornness, their rage. They didn't negotiate like sane species. They didn't retreat when logic dictated. And they didn't seem to care about dying. That's what made the mercenaries steer clear. You couldn't intimidate humans. You couldn't scare them into submission. They'd smile with a bloody mouth and ask if that was all you had. And if they offered you a job? Well, it meant the ones they'd already hired were dead. Zarak found that out too late. The human who met him at the port was nothing like what he expected. She wasn't armed to the teeth. No tattoos, no wild armor, no obvious implants, just jeans, a t-shirt, and eyes that looked like they'd seen the universe crack and kept blinking like nothing happened. Her name was Cal. No rank, no house sigil. Just Cal. "You came for the contract?" she asked, walking like she owned the damn moon under their feet. Zarak nodded slowly. "You still need a merc?" She looked him over like she was weighing parts, not a person. "We lost 3 teams already. You'll probably die." He laughed without humor. "I probably deserve to." She smiled faintly. "Then we'll get along just fine." "The job?" "A simple extraction. That's what she said. Go into an underground facility, grab a data core, and get out. Easy." Except nothing about it was. The facility was buried beneath old Detroit, a place humans had long abandoned after what they called the collapse. Zarak didn't know what that meant, but the scars were still there. Buildings split like cracked bones, glass melted into puddles, and streets that growled when you walked on them. And the air? It whispered things. By the time they reached the outer gates, 2 of Cal's backup drones had shorted out. No reason, no explanation, just sparks, smoke, and silence. Zarak's scanner turned to static. His plasma rifle started overheating without ever being fired. "This place is cursed," he muttered. Cal just nodded. "Yep, but that's not what killed the others." He paused. "Then what did?" She didn't look back. "Fear." He laughed again, but softer this time. It didn't sound right in his throat. Not here. They entered the dark. The dark didn't wait for them. It swallowed them whole. There was no transition, no slow dimming of light. One moment they stood beneath a shattered sky. The next it was ink black, the air thick and silent like a tomb. Zarak's night vision visor blinked, flickered, and died completely. Cal didn't flinch. She just clicked a small light on her belt, dim red, barely enough to see her boots, and kept walking. Zarak followed, claws wrapped tight around the grip of his malfunctioning plasma rifle. He didn't trust it, didn't trust this place. But most of all, he didn't trust her. There was something about Cal that felt too calm, like she'd already seen how this would end and didn't care. "Why this data core?" he asked, voice low. "Because it's not data," she said, stepping over what looked like a melted drone chassis. "It's proof." "Proof of what?" She didn't answer. They moved through what had once been a human research center. The walls were scorched with heat damage, doors fused shut or peeled back like paper. Strange black vines had grown through the ceilings, pulsing faintly like they had a heartbeat of their own. Zarak kept catching glimpses of movement just at the edge of his vision, but every time he turned, nothing was there. "You said others came before," he muttered. "What happened to them?" "They panicked." Zarak's spines flared with irritation. "That's not an answer." "It's the only one that matters down here," she replied. "You panic, you die. It doesn't matter how many guns you carry." "Guns don't work?" "They scream before they shut down, like they're afraid." He scoffed. "Weapons don't feel fear." "You sure about that?" she said, nodding at his rifle. He looked down. It was vibrating. By the time they reached the inner corridor, Zarak had seen enough to make his stomach churn. Bodies, or what was left of them. Not torn apart, not shot, just hollow, like something had pulled the life out of them and left the skin as a warning. Human bodies, alien bodies, even synthetic ones. No blood, no signs of struggle. just faces frozen in screams and eyes that looked like they'd seen the end of time. And all of it silent. Zarek wanted to speak, to ask Cal what the hell this place really was, but the air itself pushed the words back down his throat. Like it didn't want sound here. Like it would punish noise. They moved slowly. At the end of the corridor was a vault door. Bigger than anything Zarek had seen, with human symbols etched deep into the metal. Warnings. He recognized the shape of one word through the grime. Restricted. Cal placed her hand on the scanner. It didn't beep. It didn't buzz. The door just opened, groaning like something ancient and furious had just been disturbed. Inside was the data core. It wasn't a device. It was a person. She was human, or had been once. Now her body was wired into the floor, cables burrowed into her spine, her skull, her chest. Her eyes were open, glowing faintly. Zarek stepped back instinctively. She's alive? Barely, Cal said. She volunteered for this. For what? To become the memory. The evidence. Zarek stared at the woman in horror. What kind of madness is this? Cal knelt beside her, brushing dust from the woman's cheek like she knew her. They buried the truth here. What Earth did before the collapse, what we did to ourselves, to others, she remembers it all? The glowing eyes flickered toward Zarek. His breath caught. He heard screaming, not from her, from inside his head, 1,000 voices howling pain, betrayal, rage, cities burning, skies turning red, whole planets shattered. He staggered back, clutching his skull. Make it stop! Cal stood slowly. You wanted the job, now take the core. Zarek blinked through the pain. What is she? Cal's voice was colder now. She's why no one takes human contracts anymore. Because if you bring this memory back to the stars, they'll never look at your kind the same again. Zarek's hands shook. Not from fear of the woman, from fear of the truth. Zarek didn't move at first. His boots felt cemented to the cold metal floor, and his breath came in tight, shallow gasps. The screams had faded, but they'd left something behind. A pressure. A knowing. Like a door had opened in his mind. And now he could feel what she felt. The woman on the floor, half human, half machine. She wasn't just storing data, she was the data. Cal didn't speak. She just watched him, like she was waiting for him to decide if he was still in this, or already lost. You said she remembers, Zarek rasped. Remembers what? Cal looked down at the glowing eyes. What we did to the galaxy before we got knocked back into the dirt. Zarek swallowed hard. You mean your wars? Cal gave a humorless smile. Wars were just the start. She stepped aside so he could see the strange terminal at the woman's feet. It looked ancient, covered in scratches and soot, but still humming faintly with life. Cal gestured to it. You want to get paid? You need to jack in. Extract the memory yourself. Direct interface. Zarek took a step back. I'm not putting my brain into that thing. You already did, she said quietly. The moment you heard her scream, you're part of it now. He turned towards the door, heart hammering, instincts screaming to run. But it had vanished. Gone. Just wall now. He spun toward her. What is this? You trapping me here? No, Cal said. She is. The lights dimmed, and the hum turned into a low growl. Zarek looked at the woman, no, the core, and her mouth twitched slightly, just enough to show teeth. Her eyes pulsed brighter. Zarek dropped to a knee. Something hot and sharp bloomed behind his eyes, like a spike driven through his skull. Images flashed, too fast, too real. Earth, covered in ash. Ships, not alien, but human, blotting out stars with fire. Experiments in orbiting prisons. Camps on distant moons where aliens were dissected like lab rats. whole species made extinct by quiet decisions in quiet rooms. And then the collapse. Not a war, a rebellion. The rest of the galaxy had turned on Earth, not because it was weak, but because they had seen what humans were willing to do when they weren't the ones in charge. Zarak choked on his own breath. You were the monsters. Cal didn't deny it. We still are. That's why they tried to bury her. Tried to erase it all. The peace, the council, the new rules. They're all built on the lie that humans are tame now. Zarak looked at the woman. Why keep her alive? Cal shrugged. Because lies rot, and someone always comes looking for the truth. The lights flickered, then everything went black. When Zarak opened his eyes, he was lying on the floor of his ship. Alone. No Cal, no data core, no memory of how he got back. Just one thing waiting on his terminal. A single file, pulsing like a heartbeat. He stared at it, bile rising in his throat. Evidence. He reached out, fingers trembling, and hovered over the command to delete it. Then stopped. If what he saw was real, if this memory got out, the whole galaxy would turn on humanity again. Not out of fear, but vengeance. And Earth wouldn't survive the second time. He could walk away, destroy the file, pretend it was all a hallucination, get paid, find another job, try to live a little longer. Or he could deliver it, burn the lie, let the galaxy see what humans had once been, and might still be. He sat there for hours, staring, listening to the hum of the ship. And somewhere, deep in his mind, he could still hear her scream. Zarak didn't sleep. Couldn't. Every time he closed his eyes, the memories weren't just there. They were alive. Not like dreams. Dreams you could wake from. This was something else. He didn't just remember the images from the core. He felt them. The fear. The agony. The hollow, clinical cruelty behind the decisions that shaped 1,000 galactic scars. By the 5th hour of sitting in silence, he still hadn't touched the file again. He hadn't deleted it, but he hadn't opened it either. It was a toxin sealed in a box, and he didn't know if it would kill just him or everyone. The ship's console chirped. Incoming hail. Zarak's breath caught. He wasn't broadcasting. He wasn't on any channel. He hadn't left orbit. He tapped the console. A grainy visual feed flickered on, revealing a face he hadn't seen since his crew died. Tessra, a Brelix assassin with eyes colder than vacuum. Her fur was matted now, one ear torn, but that smirk was still the same. Thought you were dead, Zarak muttered. Yeah, well, she purred. I heard the same about you, and yet here we are. He didn't respond. Just stared. She leaned forward. Funny thing is, I was in system, heard rumors. Something about a merc taking a human contract, solo. Zarak's pulse spiked. She noticed. So I thought, nah, couldn't be him. He's not that stupid. But then, your ship lights up like a damn flare. You really shouldn't let files from dead zones ping the network. Makes people curious. He swore under his breath. I didn't open it. Didn't even touch the damn thing. But you have it, she said, voice low now. Don't you? Zarak didn't answer. She didn't need him to. Tessra's face disappeared, replaced by a targeting schematic. His ship. Lock-on warning. The screen blinked red. You know what that file is? She said over the comms. It's a death sentence. For Earth. For every human breathing. And maybe for you too if you don't hand it over. He stood slowly, fury rising. You want to silence it, like the others. No, she said. I want to survive. And I know what happens when that kind of truth leaks. Civilizations burn, alliances shatter, peace dies. Zarak's claws flexed. I'm not giving it to you. You don't have a choice, she snapped. They'll come for it, not just me. The Drek, the Guild, hell, even the humans. You think Cal was on your side? She used you. Fed the memory into your brain and let you go like a plague vector. You think you left that facility on your own?" He hesitated. She was right. He didn't remember leaving. And now it hit him. The door wasn't gone because the memory locked him in. The door was gone because Cal never intended for him to leave the way he entered. He was the courier, the carrier. "Too late," Tessera said. "They've already marked your ship. You'll never make it off-world." Zarek's hand hovered over the console. He could jettison the drive, launch it into the sun, let the memory die. Or... He tapped a command. The targeting lock broke. Tessera's voice changed. "Wait, what did you—" "I uploaded it," Zarak said quietly. Silence. "To the Council, the open net, every major server in the quadrant." Tessera's hiss of rage came through like static. "You idiot! Do you know what you've done?" "Yeah," he said. "I finally finished the contract." He cut the comm. Outside, the stars seemed quieter. He stood at the viewing pane, watching his choices ripple through the void. The memory, her memory, was out now. Alive in every data stream, every broadcast. There was no taking it back. And in the back of his mind, something laughed, not cruelly, not joyfully, but with the hollow relief of a truth too long buried. She was free now. And Earth? Earth would have to answer. They didn't wait long. Less than 12 hours after Zarek's upload, the galaxy erupted like a wound torn open. He watched from the edge of a nameless moon in the Tigran Drift as news feeds scrambled to keep up with the chaos. Leaked archive reveals pre-collapse atrocities committed by Earth-based regimes. Council in emergency session over humanity's suppressed past. Riots erupt on Jolta Prime. Citizens burn Earth flags in protest. Ships were grounded. Borders were locked. Every major alliance with Earth was put on pause. Some severed completely. Governments scrambled for explanations, damage control, someone to blame. But it didn't matter. The truth was viral now, uncensored, raw, full of screams and broken promises. And at the center of it all, that woman. The core. The memory. Zarek didn't feel satisfaction, just exhaustion. There was no triumph in what he'd done, just a bitter sense that the universe finally saw what it always should have. Humanity hadn't changed. They'd just buried their blood deeper than anyone could dig. Until now. He stared at the console, fingers trembling. He knew what came next. The Council might scream, the masses might revolt, but Earth would hunt, not for the truth, for him, the carrier, the leak, the problem to erase. The ship's warning alarm confirmed it. Incoming signal, Earth origin. Zarek's heart sank. He hesitated, then opened the channel. Cal's face flickered onto the screen. Still calm, still unreadable. "You did it," she said. "You knew I would." "I wasn't sure," she admitted. "Most crack under the weight." He stared at her, a bitter laugh rising. "You could have just released it yourself." Her expression didn't change. "If a human does it, it's sabotage. If an alien does it, it's a warning." Zarek realized what she meant. He was the message. "You used me." "I set you free," she replied softly. "You just didn't know the chains were there." He leaned closer to the screen. "And now what? Earth erases me and calls it a glitch in the archives?" She didn't answer, but someone else did. Another voice broke through the comm, this one darker, modulated. "Zarek of the Vrental Brood, you are hereby designated a Level 9 containment risk by the United Earth Directorate. Your cooperation is required." He paled. He knew that voice. Not a person, a system, a purge AI, the kind used to clean up interstellar scandals before they sparked wars. He reached for the throttle. "You sent them?" "No," Cal said, eyes heavy. "They were always coming. You were just the alarm." Zarek's ship rattled. Not from weapons, from something attaching to the hull. He spun to the feed, a drop pod, sleek, black, no insignia, Earth's private kind, no jurisdiction, no mercy. He bolted for his sidearm. A voice echoed through the interior, calm, polite, horrifying. Please remain seated for termination. Panic increases pain. Zarak growled and fired into the ceiling, hitting the pod's access vent. Sparks flew. The ship buckled, a hiss of pressure as atmosphere bled into vacuum. Still the voice remained. Thank you for your compliance. Then something moved in the shadows behind him. Fast. Quiet. A shape, not human, not machine, something in between. Zarak turned. Too late. It hit him hard, slamming him into the bulkhead. Pain burst through his ribs. He lashed out with his claws, caught the edge of something metallic. Sparks flew, a hiss of static. The figure staggered. He dove toward the console, gasping, blood in his mouth. One command left. One jump. He slammed the emergency FTL. The stars stretched. The attacker disappeared into light. Then, nothing. Silence. When he woke, he was drifting. No coordinates, no communications, no Cal, no Earth. Just cold space and the pulse of the memory still buried in his skull like a ticking bomb. Zarak coughed, eyes blurry, vision dancing with static. They were going to keep coming. Earth wouldn't stop until the message, the memory, was dead. And now he had a choice, hide or fight. Space wasn't silent anymore. Not for Zarak. Even drifting in the cold between stars, engines offline, life support failing, he could still hear the whisper of the memory in his head. It had gone from screams to something worse. Reminders, echoes of suffering, guilt, and unanswered cries. It haunted his sleep, cracked through his thoughts, filled every moment of stillness with guilt that wasn't his, and rage that was. He floated in a derelict quadrant known as the Gray Swath, where broken ships and forgotten wars left their bones behind. Perfect hiding ground. But hiding wasn't living, and Earth would never stop looking. Not for him, for the memory. He had to move. He had to find someone, anyone, willing to stand against Earth's quiet purge. He didn't expect an answer to come looking for him. The ship appeared out of nowhere. No warp trail, no scan signature. Just a dark mass rising from a nearby asteroid field, like a ghost waking up. Its hull was jagged, patchwork, old but upgraded, not built for war, but rebuilt for it. It hailed him on a private frequency, an old resistance code he hadn't heard in cycles, the kind used by species who didn't trust the Council, who had been burned before. He accepted the hail. A face appeared. She was lean, reptilian, her scales dulled with age and battle scars. Her eyes burned like fire through the screen. Zarak of Vrental, you carry the core. He didn't deny it. And you are? My name's forgotten, but the humans called me Subject 73 before they abandoned the Blackstone Labs. The blood drained from Zarak's face. That name, Blackstone, he had seen it in the core, one of the facilities where non-human children were experimented on, where telepathy was tested with pain and loss and death. You survived? He asked, stunned. She smiled, but it wasn't kind. I adapted, like all the forgotten ones. Behind her he saw others, a crew made of species he thought extinct or scattered, hybrids, mutants, some more machine than flesh, survivors of Earth's darkest experiments, ghosts from the files now spilled across the stars, and now they were together, watching him, waiting. You leaked the truth, she said. You made the galaxy see us again. I didn't do it for anyone, Zarak muttered. I just couldn't carry the lie. She nodded slowly. Then maybe you can carry something else. He stared. What? A war. They docked him with caution, weapons trained on every port. But they didn't fire, didn't threaten. Instead, they brought him into a room with walls of old metal, lit by the glow of rusted hollow screens replaying news clips, riots, revolutions, politicians screaming over feeds, ships defecting from Earth's grip. "The galaxy's in chaos now," she said, leading him past a wall etched with the names of the lost. "Some want peace, some want blood, but all want answers." Zarak didn't speak. He couldn't. He was staring at a map. Systems marked in red, Earth-controlled. Systems in yellow, undecided. But the ones in black. "Resistance cells," she explained. "Hidden, scattered, ready." He turned to her. "You're building an army?" "No," she said. "We're building a memory that can fight back." He frowned. "What does that mean?" She stepped closer. "The core didn't just store the past. It learned from it, adapted. It isn't just a recording. It's alive now, a sentience born from pain. And it's choosing sides." Zarak staggered back a step. "Are you saying—" "Yes," she interrupted. "It's choosing you." The lights flickered, and suddenly he heard it again. Not screams, but a voice, software, familiar. "You freed me. Let me help you." His hands trembled. "What does it want?" She looked him dead in the eye. "To finish what was started." Zarak exhaled slowly. This wasn't just about leaking the truth anymore. It was about what came after. Earth was coming. But so was something else now. Something they made. And now it wanted to burn them down. They gathered in shadows. Not in grand halls or war rooms, but in underground bunkers, forgotten satellites, hollowed-out moons, and stations too broken for patrols to care about. Places Earth once used, then discarded. Places where its victims had hidden for years, waiting for a reason to rise. Now they had one. Zarak stood at the center of it all, not as a leader by title, but as the carrier of the memory, the proof, the spark. And whether he liked it or not, they looked to him now. Survivors, hybrids, traitor AI fragments, exiled soldiers, even a few humans who had seen too much and refused to stay silent. He wasn't a hero, but heroes weren't what they needed. They needed someone angry enough to act, and broken enough to risk everything. The strike had to be symbolic, not just another ambush, not another skirmish in the void. The galaxy was already boiling with protest and fear. What they needed now was a message, a declaration. So they picked Aegis Station. Orbiting Earth's third colony in the Venari Belt, Aegis was more than a tactical hub. It was a monument, a reminder that humanity had risen from chaos and brought order to the stars. The banners on its hull read, "Unity through strength." Propaganda broadcasted 24 hours a cycle. Zarak wanted to burn it until only ash remembered those words. The crew was ready. The resistance vessel, Nocturne, was patched and ragged but fast. It carried no standard weapons, just re-engineered tech from Earth's own nightmares. Bioplague shells, hacking worms, EMP bursts designed to cripple purge AIs in one pulse. Inside the briefing chamber, Zarak outlined the plan. "We strike at shift change. Their security protocols rotate every 6.2 minutes. Long enough for the drones to realign, but short enough that human oversight can't fully reset the system." A tall, cybernetic creature, Tor, clicked his mandibles. "We breach from the industrial sector. Less armored, more blind spots." Another nodded. Naya, a clone who'd escaped a death lab. "We'll need a decoy, something loud to draw attention from the uplink core." Zarak turned to a screen displaying the memory's AI fragment, pulsing with a faint glow. "She can do that?" They looked uncertain. Zarak spoke quietly. "She wants to." The AI's voice filtered through the room, calm, gentle, chilling. I remember the Blue Room. I remember the restraints. Let me show them what it's like to be remembered. That sealed it. The plan was locked.